Jerome, I'm not an expert in this, but it feels like this shift to sort of all-out drone warfare. It feels like like an escalation. Is that fair?
Well, they've been using these Iranian Shahed drones for some time. The change is what they're aiming them at. Most of last autumn and winter, Moscow was trying to cripple Ukraine's energy infrastructure. They were trying to take out the heating, the power stations to, break the will of ordinary people to carry on the fight. That hasn't worked. And as the country's warmed up, as it's moved into spring and summer, the focus has shifted. Now what we're seeing over the last few weeks is a really determined effort to try and cripple Ukraine's grain export infrastructure. So we've seen Russia targeting these silos, these elevators, the port facilities that are needed to load grain onto ships for export. And of course, this comes in concert with the fact that Russia has pulled out of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, the deal that allowed Ukraine to export its grain around the world. Now, that's key because that grain, along with Russia's grain, is vital for feeding some of the hungriest people around the world. A number of countries rely on Ukrainian and Russian grain imports to feed their people. Now, Russia has pulled out of that deal and simultaneously launched these attacks on the ports across the south, in Odesa, and most recently, the one we're talking about last night, on the frontier, right on the edge of Ukrainian territory, on the edge of NATO territory, on the Danube, these ports on the Danube River, which mark the border between Ukraine and Romania. So it is an escalation, and it's fraught with the potential for miscalculation, because if one of those drones misfires, it goes off target, and they're not particularly reliable, there's the prospect of Russia having launched an attack on NATO soil.
Does it feel like you're in the middle of a war-torn country where you are? People going about their daily lives around you?
It's a really good question. We've just come into Kherson, which is a city that was captured by the Russians. And of course, last autumn, the Russians retreated, and it's been under Ukrainian control since about early November last year. I was here in November last year, and there were crowds of people in the main square because that was the only place there was electricity. There were food handouts. There was no power, no phone signal, no running water in most of the city. Now, a lot of those problems have been solved, but actually the city feels a lot emptier. And that's partly because once the Russians retreated, they then started shelling Kherson city on a really regular daily basis. And that's had devastating effects. So strangely, the city, which had changed hands twice during the course of the war, managed to avoid a lot of the damage that we've seen in places like Bucha or Irpin or Bakhmut, because there wasn't intense street-to-street, block-by-block fighting. But since the Russians have left, that's really changed. And only 24 hours ago, 36 hours ago, a strike on a hospital killed a doctor who was on his first day at work and killed a nurse and injured 4 other medical workers. So this is very much a city on the front line. And even while we've been here, we've heard the sound, the thunder of the explosions in the not too far away distance.